Since the dawn of time, our fathers have told tales of the great deities that crafted the known universe. Obatala, Ogun, Erile, Eshu, Olokun. Thriving off of their names off the lips of men, the gods blessed men, and in turn, men kept their names on their tongues, passing down the tales of the gods to their children, and they to their children, keeping the torch burning and the gods full of life. These men became the curators of the gods, the gatekeepers of culture, and keepers of the torch. But as times flew by and centuries passed, the curators began to fizzle out, and the flames of the torch began to dim, putting the gods out of existence. Today, a new breed of storytellers are springing forth that seek to restore the lost narrative of the deities, to restore the glory of the African experience. These are the tellers of the lost narrative, the curators of the culture.
Hi, I'm Tunde and I'm the creator and principal writer of The Wild Kingdoms. The Wild Kingdoms is an epic that involves the Orisha and is centrally concerned with an African landscape. But in terms of how that would fit compared to other stories, the Mahabharata would be maybe one of the more obvious ones. Really, I think they're universal. It's what would be known as a world story in that most cultures have at some point had maybe a pantheon of deities or spirits or supernatural belief systems, and this story is one of them. In that sense, hopefully it sits alongside other great world epics, and I suppose from an African worldview perspective, ultimately I don't think the stories are so different in terms of we're all human and the human condition is the same. There are simply different ways of telling the same kind of thing. So ultimately the idea for the Wild Kingdoms is something I've been working on for over 20 years. And the first part of it started when I was at the University College London in the Film and TV Society. And really it was born out of a desire of wanting to create some sort of big epic story that involved characters that had the same kind of skin colour as me, that looked similar to myself, my younger brother, the family members, but that could be on a big world epic stage and feel like they sat alongside things like the Mahabharata and stories of that kind. It's important for me that the stories do accurately represent Yoruba culture, and the motivation for that is that obviously that's where my family are from, my name comes from the culture, and my ancestry is there, but also really there's so much cultural richness that it would be a crime as a writer to make something up that was not as good as the original source material. And frankly, when you deal with a pantheon of characters that include Eshu, Ogun, Olokun, Olodumare, there really is, from a writer's perspective, you could not imagine something better than that.
Pleased by the new narrative, the gods have chosen to re-emerge and embrace new forms. With dim but sonorous voices, they call out to the newer generation, influenced by technology to tell their stories.
My name is Bukola and I'm the founder and CEO of Kucheza Gaming. Kucheza Gaming is an esports and games company for 6 to 18-year-olds, so for K-12, which is the primary and secondary school audience. So we're a bridge between esports, games, career pathways, and education. I've been quite privileged to be in the industry for a while now, and that's more like the marketing industry and where you kind of see trends. And what we're starting to see is a lot of growth that has happened on the African continent, especially around mobile, and then in the esports world around the penetration of mobile esports and just mobile games generally on the African continent. So for us, the trend is so compelling that we had to think about a way to bring our stories to life in a new medium, which is quite an interesting prospect. The Wild Kingdoms book was a book I'd come across about 10 years ago. I've known Tunde for almost 15 years, if not more. And I remember that he was working on the Wild Kingdoms about 10 years ago. For me, when I saw the story ages ago, I kept thinking, I don't know enough about my culture. And I found it really weird that, it was Tunde that was bringing this kind of story to life for me. When I knew, characters like Shango, I knew characters like Ogun, but Olokun, I didn't know a lot about Oshun, I didn't know, Batala, I didn't know a lot of that, and it really intrigued me and it was quite fun. Last year, I think, we were on a panel and we're discussing gaming and education, and the more we spoke on that panel, the more the questions came from the audience, the more it occurred to me quite seriously that if we must develop games that have real potential from an IP point of view in terms of allowing Africans to tell their stories and kind of capture that value through the line, it was important that we reach out not to try to create things from scratch necessarily by ourselves, but we reach out to historians, people that have spent years and documented history to try to bring out something that is really, really interesting and something that can really last, that stand the test of time. And so from that realization in that moment, I literally came out of that meeting and just sent Tunde an email saying, I'm coming to London, we need to talk when I do get there, and we did. And I think the fascination for Tunde, of course, was the fact that, whilst the Wild Kingdom story was thought about from the perspective of a book and also from a trading cards game, it wasn't really thought about for the audience that we're trying to appeal to. And I think the concept of bringing our stories to life for a new generation was really interesting, especially because of this device in your hand that is everywhere. It just opens up a lot of opportunities. So that's how we got here.
As the names of the gods are taking their place on our lips and in the hearts of men, they seek now new forms of perception.
My name is Kucheza Madason. I am an illustrator and designer, and I would be working as the concept artist on the Wild Kingdoms mobile game. We have seen, through the years, and we've been exposed to a lot of the foreign stories from video games, movies, fashion. I feel like a lot of African creators are now trying to take ownership of their stories and bring it to the fore in recent times, and that's something I'm really looking forward to seeing more of and also being a part of. When Bukola reached out to me regarding the project and coming on board to work on the Wild Kingdoms mobile game, I felt there was a lot of overlap and similarities in what I was doing at the time, and for me it was an easy yes, because I felt like going theme-wise, it was similar to what I was doing at the time, and I'd see the mobile game or the video game space just an extension of the canvas or the paintings that I do on canvas, and it was a challenge I was looking forward to. For the Wild Kingdoms game, I'm looking to create a space or create visuals that not only younger audiences but also the older people can relate, taking fragments of the history and fragments of the oral tradition and narrative which we've heard and reinterpreting them in the characters I create and the environment. Overall, I just want the people that get to interact with the space to have fun and for it to be a means of escapism as well as a medium through which they get to learn a thing or two about their culture.
Those who once reigned are emerging again as new gods, as the torch is being lit again and begins to burn brighter than ever before.
The first time I shared the story with my kids, and my kids aren't necessarily the first to say I'm Nigerian or I'm African. When I explained the game to them, they thought, ooh, actually, I would like to play that because I don't know a lot about my culture. So I didn't think they would have that response. And I think the more we've been testing out the prototype with kids, we're getting similar feedback. But more importantly, the game, in how we're thinking about it, it's just a game kids will love to play. Kids 10 to 14 will love to play, and that is how we're approaching it.
The younger audience are going to ease right into the game itself. Like I said, we're trying to approach the game using a cell-shaded technique, and the younger audience are already used to looking at cartoons, comic books, manga from the day-to-day basics, and they also approach theirs using the same technique. So I feel they would ease right into it and just have fun. I don't think it's going to be a challenge for them getting used to the visual aesthetics.
If there's any word that kind of captures this project, it will be collaboration. And the second one is just kind of being open and learning as we go through this process. Because again, you know, this is a new world to most of us, and so documenting this process becomes even more important for us to do.
These new age storytellers are carrying on the message and pushing forth the narrative. The perception of the African experience can regain its stance as the mother of all traditions.